Midlands, Wales, southwest first thing. The cloud and rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland pushes south, and it turns more showery so that it's sunshine and showers for many on Friday, drier again on Saturday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hi there, just gone 4 o'clock. Welcome to Brazier from 4 until 6. Coming up for you in the next hour, a scene of pandemonium in the heart of London over the weekend as a crowd ran riot through areas packed with tourists near Oxford Circus. There was fighting, there was looting and some intimidation too. Have our uniformed officers lost the ability to police large outbreaks of street violence, even in areas where they have the numbers? The thoughts of former Met Police officer Chris Hobbs. Also the debate this hour, our debate. Figures out today showing the number of Brits in employment rose by 73,000 between June and July this year. And despite vacancies dropping slightly, there's still widespread demand for labour. Vacancies in hospitality up a third within 3 months. We're asking, in this current climate, is there any excuse to be out of work? Kelvin Mackenzie offering a view. And is India about to say a fond farewell to the town crier? We learned today that they are being rendered obsolete by modern technology. I'll meet one of Britain's band of remaining town criers to find out if there's a market for delivering the news with a shout. With me for the next 2 hours, the former Government Minister Norman Baker. But first, we have the latest news headlines with Ray.
Thanks, Colin. Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 4. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. New figures show wages have fallen at their fastest rate since records began more than 2 decades ago. The Office for National Statistics say growth in regular pay, excluding bonuses, was 4.7% between April and June. However, taking into account rising prices such as food, energy and fuel, the real value of wages has fallen by 3%. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is defending the Conservative Party's plans to help the economy.
We're still in the leadership contest at the moment. Now, my priority is reducing taxes so people can keep more of their own money, at the same time as making sure we boost energy supply. It's wrong to just keep sticking plasters on this problem. What we actually need to do is make sure we are unleashing more energy, for example, from the North Sea. We're investing in technologies like nuclear, and we're finding more renewable energy as well. We need to solve this problem for the long term.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the wage stats are further evidence of mounting pressure on millions of people.
Look, this is further pressure on so many families, so many working people. And this wage stagnation has been going on for 10 years. So I really understand just how people are struggling. It's one of the reasons that we announced our energy price freeze yesterday, to keep those bills down and to make the choice that the oil and gas companies in the North Sea should pay a windfall tax to help people who are struggling through this winter period. So it's further evidence, I think, of the pressure that so many millions of people are under.
In international news, Jill Biden has tested positive for COVID-19. The US First Lady began to experience symptoms late last night, but the White House describes them as mild. It comes just a few weeks after President Biden tested positive for COVID. He's been tested again and remains negative. Former Manchester United player Ryan Giggs told police his head clashed with his ex-girlfriend during a tussle over a mobile phone in 2020, but that it wasn't deliberate. The 48-year-old is on trial for alleged controlling and coercive behaviour against his former partner, Kate Greville, and the alleged common assault of her younger sister. He denies all of the charges, and we'll keep you up to date with the latest as we get it here on GB News. A court has heard how two men who died after becoming stuck in a burning hotel had tried to smash open a window to escape. A fatal accident inquiry into the 2017 fire at Cameron House Hotel on the banks of Loch Lomond near Glasgow is currently underway. Simon Midgley and his partner Richard Dyson, both from London, died in the fire. A fire investigator told the inquiry that a picture frame had been prized from the wall with the likely intention to smash the window. A man is in a serious condition in hospital and two other people are injured, including a 17-year-old boy, after a shooting last night in northwest London. Armed police were called to a residential street in Brent just after 7 p.m. yesterday. All three had been shot but are stable today. The Met Police say the suspects fled before officers arrived at the scene. The Conservative leadership candidates have vowed to better scrutinise the Scottish Government if they become the next Prime Minister. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will face off at another hustings in Perth this evening. Both have stated their opposition to a referendum on Scottish independence. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has committed to get Scotland's economy moving. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak wants there to be greater scrutiny of Scottish civil servants to make them more accountable. Tory MP Andrew Bowie believes Sunak is the ideal candidate to ensure that Scotland remains in the UK. A military base in Russian-occupied Crimea has been hit by a series of explosions. Moscow claimed the blasts were caused by sabotage following attacks last week on Russian warplanes along the Crimean coast. Ukraine hasn't publicly admitted responsibility. Meanwhile, President Zelensky is calling on world leaders to help force Russian troops to withdraw from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in southeastern Ukraine. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Colin Brazier.
Afternoon to you, 6 minutes past 4. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, yes, that pair again. They'll try to convince Scottish Conservatives this evening that they are the right candidates, or the right candidate, to lead the party and hence the country. Truss and Sunak will go... Let me try and pronounce that properly. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will go head-to-head in Perth this evening. It's the latest Tory leadership hustings. Both hopefuls, she's rather more hopeful than him, stating their opposition to a referendum on Scottish independence, IndyRef 2 in the jargon, and a drive to convince Conservative members that their policies will help keep the Union together. Our Scotland reporter David Donaldson has been asking people in Stirling what they think about the two candidates.
They could make a blind bit of difference at all. I think they should get on and decide who's going to run the Conservative Party and who's going to lead the country, and stop wasting time.
I mean, Liz Truss has come out and said that Nicola Sturgeon is an attention seeker. Is that something you think she is, or?
Absolutely. She needs to shut up and get on with her job and stop pushing for unwanted referendums.
It might tighten the case for independence. It might make people a bit keener to be independent once they hear what they really think when they're talking to their own
And that's the thing, they've really come out and said that they don't want a second independence referendum. They've also said, Rishi Sunak said he's going to tighten things up across the UK as well, which I'm sure a lot of people in this country won't want to hear.
No, absolutely. I don't want to hear it, and I know a lot of people that don't want to hear it either. More central control from London is just what we don't need.
Interesting thoughts. Away from tonight's hustings, a wider debate on whether the infighting between candidates has exposed fault lines in the Conservative Party and provided ammunition for Labour. That's the usual argument, isn't it? Writing in the Times today, the author Joanna Williams has argued that actually, for all that it may be other things, it's been good for democracy. What on earth does she mean? Joanna joins us now to explain. Joanna Williams, welcome to you. Read your piece. Sadly, it's behind the Times' paywall, so if anybody else wants to, they'll have to cough up. But I thought it was a convincing argument that says it's toughened up the candidates in the way that one of those, the primaries do for US presidential candidates. It's exposed policies that actually have gone down badly from these candidates, which they then changed. And that's good for policy making.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more people that are involved in voting for the next PM, the better. And the more people that get to have a say and get their voices heard. I think it's been really interesting that a number of new issues seem to have come to light as soon as the two candidates have been confronted by a studio audience. Issues such as the price of meat, for example, the state of the NHS, sadly weren't being raised by some of the mainstream media interviewers in the first round, the debates that took place on the BBC and on Sky News in particular. It seems to me the interviewers just weren't really raising these questions. And it was when the candidates were confronted by a studio audience who were really determined to raise the issues that are of most concern to them, that a number of different issues suddenly began to be raised. And I think that's got to be good for democracy. It's really important both for the candidates and for the ideas that they're putting forward, that they get road tested before an audience of the general public or a more general public, let's say, than just MPs behind closed committee room doors.
And your argument is that actually when you take someone like Theresa May, to borrow your phrase, she wasn't road tested. It was a coronation. The men and women in grey suits just ushered her into her place, and that denied us this opportunity, or the Conservative membership, but a large group of tens of thousands of people, rather than just a few hundred MPs, the opportunity to really have a good look at her.
Yeah, and I think that proved to be quite disastrous, not just for the Conservative Party, but for the country, far more importantly, in the long run. And I don't think you'd want to repeat that. But it seems to me that many people in the Conservative Party haven't actually learnt that lesson. And all the concern about a phrase I'd never heard until a couple of months ago, kind of blue on blue infighting in the Conservative Party, all of that concern really seems to be to kind of squash this dissent, keep these debates behind closed doors, stop the disagreements from being aired in public. And really what they mean by that is keep politics itself away from normal people. Let the experts decide, let the members of parliament decide, and stop the public having any right to have a say on what's going on here. And I think we should really put our foot down and insist that actually the problem with this leadership contest is not that too many people are involved. The problem is that too few people are involved. The problem's not that too many issues are being aired. The problem is actually the opposite again, that too few issues are being aired.
Well, there are lots of people out there who've criticised the entire process. It's gone too long, it's too boring, serves no useful purpose. It's nice to get a contrary view. Joanna Williams, appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed. Norman Baker, former MP and Minister, joins me here. I was asking you during the commercial break about your contacts with Liz Truss, and you remember her addressing the Liberal Democrats, which you used to be a member
Yes,
of.
I was on the same platform as her for that debate. Joanna's interesting, and her last point, that more people should be involved rather than fewer, is right. But the problem is that we're talking about 0.3% of the population who are the Conservative Party members. And while it's true that the policies that the two candidates want to take forward have been road-tested within the Conservative ranks, the great problem has been that they have had to put forward policies in order to win votes in this particular election. And therefore, they're arguing for what, the 0.3% of the population or not the public at large. And the danger of this open process that they've had, and in a way it is democratic within confines, the danger is they're going to be committed to policies which the 0.3% of the population who are predominantly rich in the south, elderly, not all of them of course, but many of them, are going to want. And when they actually go out to the public at large, they may find those policies aren't very popular at all.
Does your argument therefore run that actually, had this been left to an even smaller electorate, namely MPs, at least MPs would have been cognizant of ultimately what the test was, and that is the millions that form a general election?
I think that's right. MPs, and I speak from experience, of course, MPs have to get elected, and they have to be able to appeal to people beyond their ranks. And Conservative MPs are no different to Liberal MPs or Labour MPs. They have to be able to persuade people in their constituencies to vote for them. And the danger is by taking policy positions that the narrow Tory membership wants, they may find that's actually difficult in the long term. You know, for example, we're talking about Scotland perhaps in a moment, but, you know, Rishi Sunak is saying about clamping down on effectively on what the Scottish government does. That may run well with Scottish members, but it's a disastrous policy in Scotland.
Norman, much more from Norman Baker throughout the course of the rest of the show. But Norman, thanks for now. A scene of pandemonium in the heart of London over the weekend as a crowd ran riot through areas packed with tourists near Oxford Circus. There was fighting, looting, I think it's fair to describe it as looting, and widespread intimidation. We were thinking about showing you the pictures. We thought again, because there have been arrests and people that we show you may well have been subsequently arrested. But take it from me, I've seen the pictures. It was chaos in some of the busiest parts of central London just over the weekend. The Met Police, as I say, they say several arrests were made. More widely, with the rate of reported crimes below 6%, government struggling to meet their target of new officers. Is there perhaps a question mark over the willingness of uniformed officers to get stuck in when a major problem at street level develops like that? Let's turn to the former Metropolitan Police Officer, Chris Hobbs, who's here. Chris, thanks for coming in, appreciate it. Have you seen that footage?
Yes.
You have. You'll understand for legal reasons why we can't show it. What was your reaction to it?
I was pretty shocked. Apparently, according to officers that actually went to the scene, part of the problem, or the problem was caused by TikTok. Someone put on TikTok that a well-known drill music artiste was going to Nike, and so the followers, some of whom are obviously not particularly nice individuals, turned up to see him. And once they're all grouped in a mob like that, then we saw what happened, you know, complete and utter chaos. I think police, well, I understand police weren't prepared for it. These days, of course, intelligence units have been shut down, so they probably wouldn't have picked up any intelligence in advance of what was going to happen. And then it was a case of basically getting officers there in transits and so on to deal with the problem as best they could. I understand it, as I understand it, juveniles were arrested, and as I understand it, the parents of juveniles weren't terribly happy with the police.
With the police?
With the police, not as much with their offspring, but okay. but that's the problem. And I think the other thing is, this unpleasant as it was, the other incidents that we've had, shootings, gang warfare, murder, stabbings, that's something that is of huge concern to those officers out there. But then, of course, they do a perfectly reasonable stop, you would think, on an individual a couple of days ago, and all hell breaks loose. And the two officers, or sorry, the 7 officers that were involved in the stop are now all under investigation. So it's a bit of a dilemma for police officers. Generally speaking, they're damned if they do, damned if they don't, and they really are. Morale is plunging through the floor.
Well, I'm stunned to hear you say those officers who made that stop are under investigation. I want to have a conversation with a journalistic colleague about that, but I was tempted to address that story yesterday with Mark White, our security editor, who put a totally different spin on events to the ones as presented in the mainstream media. So no pun intended, I'll park that, because it feels like a story that needs to be told, and it's not being told at the moment. But just on the broad point, and I take what you're saying about, sadly, all too routine killings and knifings and the rest of it, but there was something a little bit new under the sun. We have seen it before, actually, but not for some time, about that gathering, that instantaneous gathering of people organised on social media, encrypted services. So actually, the intelligence gathering you're talking about would be incredibly difficult. I saw some stuff online saying, where are the heavies from the cops who can just in France, some stop stuff happening?
Well, unfortunately, if you're getting in trouble for doing a simple traffic stop, then the amount of trouble you'll get into if you behave like the French police, the Kenyan police that we've seen on news bulletins. I was watching foreign police, I'm not sure which country, but they were dealing with football hooligans, and they just battered them. Of course, these days, all you're going to end up with, if you're a police officer, if your force isn't proportionate and reasonable, is ending up in court. And you can tell at some protests, the younger officers, when they're under pressure, when there's people in their faces, mobile phones out, of course, and they're hesitant as whether to draw their batons and then whether to use them, because they know if they misstrike a protester or a thug on the head split open.
Viral, and they might end up
lose their jobs. Exactly.
Lose their jobs. Norman Baker, former Home Office Minister.
Yes, Crime Prevention Minister, in fact.
Well, I mean, there is a view, isn't there, that I again saw some of the stuff online over the weekend, that the austerity cuts saw a lot of seasoned officers with experience of diffusing combustible situations on the streets of our big cities take early retirement. And that trickle-down of knowledge and expertise didn't happen. And you've got a whole cohort of green officers coming in now who don't much fancy it.
Well, there's an issue for many years about police officers retiring after, I think it's 30 years of service, and we do lose people that way as well. So that's a contributory factor. But, you know, law and order in a democracy like Britain is maintained not simply by force of the police, it's maintained by the population at large behaving in a reasonable manner. And if everybody decides to break the law, there will never be enough police to deal with that. So we have to rely on people respecting the law. And the lack of respect for the law in some circumstances is partly what's driving this, as indeed is I think the low conviction rates. The low conviction rates reflect perhaps the cuts in police numbers in recent years. I mean, the chance of being successfully prosecuted for burglary are now, I think it's 10% or something. It's far too low. And actually, we know this in the Home Office, and the statistics in the Home Office, the deterrent factor for criminals is actually not the length of sentence, although many people want longer sentences. The deterrent factor is whether you get caught and successfully prosecuted.
What do you make of Chris's point? And I know it's anecdotal on one level, we can't prove it, but he's saying actually that the parents of these youths who gathered over the weekend and caused mayhem on Friday evening in central London actually didn't take umbrage with their kids. Yes. They were narked with the cops.
Well, you know, I listened to Chris saying that, and that's deeply depressing if that was the case. But, you know, it's not new. We've had situations I came across as a constituency MP where you had teachers trying to deal with unruly pupils in schools. And when the parents came along, they blamed the teachers rather than their own children. I'm afraid this is now part and parcel of society.
Yeah. Chris, I'll give you the last word, and briefly, if we can. Streets of London, there's always been problem areas, but I was struck by the fact this was the tourist honeypot of central London that was affected.
But the people involved would have come from the areas where there are problems. It's basically as simple as that. What we need, yes, there is a problem with police inexperience. A lot of the guys out on the street and girls are very inexperienced, but they are getting battered. Assaults on police are going through the roof. We need more police. French have got similar population, bigger geographical area. They've got 100,000 more police officers than we have in this country.
Wow.
Give us the 100,000. Give us proper training, because training's changed because of cuts. You haven't got Hendon anymore, where you go through, you know what you're going to face when you get out on the streets. Some of the officers, one or two, don't quite. Let's get it back to the way it was. Let's get more numbers in and get the system to support police and not have them under investigation after they complete a routine traffic stop.
Maybe a little less time spent investigating hate crime incidents.
Oh, that's another topic.
Chris, thanks very much indeed. Thanks for coming in, appreciate it. Coming up, a new study looking into the impact of nuclear war suggests more than 5 billion people will die of hunger across the globe. Not a particularly cheery story. We'll bring it to you in the company of the biological weapons expert, Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, who says Britain and Britons should prepare. First, let's have a look at the weather.
Hello, it's Aidan McGibbon here with the latest weather update from the Met Office. Certainly some lively weather out there this afternoon, and there will be further showers and hit and miss thunderstorms during the rest of the day. Not everyone will be affected, though. It is turning drier towards the northwest. This area of high pressure is building in from the northwest, and that's settling things down across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. But these fronts and an area of low pressure to the south is maintaining some very intense downpours, some thunderstorms, and that will continue to be the case across southern and central England, parts of Wales overnight. The speckled nature of the showers indicates that not everyone will catch one, but if you do, well, prepare for some surface water issues, some tricky travelling conditions. For example, a warm night in the south, 15 to 16 Celsius, much fresher for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, 8 to 10 Celsius here, but actually skies clearing overnight and a beautiful start to the day, plenty of sunshine for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, increasingly North Wales, parts of the North Midlands as well, but the action is focused towards the south on Wednesday as far as showers and thunderstorms are concerned, and there could be some very lively downpours there towards the southeast in particular, some slow-moving thunderstorms. All the while, it's turning cooler. Temperatures at around 24, 25 Celsius in the southeast, high teens, low 20s elsewhere. And further showers will continue across central and southern parts of England through the evening and overnight. Eventually, many of these will fade away. A gap then, clear spells for many, but further cloud and rain pushes into western Scotland and Northern Ireland overnight. 12 or 13 Celsius in the north, 16, 17 further south, so still a relatively warm night to come. But actually for many it's a bright start to the day, certainly some sunshine to be had across Northern England, the Midlands, Wales, southwest first thing. The cloud and rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland pushes south, and it turns more showery so that it's sunshine and showers for many on Friday, drier again on Saturday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A very short history lesson for you now. In 1957, the British author Neville Shute wrote a novel. It was turned into a film called On the Beach, and it caused a sensation, for it depicted the after effects of a nuclear war with most of the world's population left to perish. He imagined, Neville Shute, that the last survivors would be in Australia. 65 years later, and predictions of a nuclear apocalypse still have the capacity to shock. The latest, it's a study published in the Nature Food Journal, found that all-out conflict would be catastrophic for global food production and would result in 5, wait for it, billion deaths. American scientists calculated how much sun-blocking soot would enter the atmosphere as a result of firestorms created by the detonation of multiple nuclear weapons, leading to their worst-case scenario, suggesting the enormous decline in crop yields that would cause 75% of the world's population to starve to death within a couple of years. Well, as Neville Shute suggested, the only country to escape the worst consequences, at least for a while, would be, you guessed it, Australia. We're joined by Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, the former head of the British Army's Chemical, Biological, Radioactive and Nuclear Regiment, who has been writing and talking recently about the increased threat of nuclear Armageddon. Hamish, welcome to you. Too often it will seem to many the genuine raised risk of a nuclear conflict is dismissed as the rantings of preppers.
Colin, yes, good afternoon. I think there's nothing new in this report, as you've already stipulated. We all know that, a massive nuclear strike, what's called mutually assured destruction, would make a planet or create a planet that was hardly worth living on in future. But I think it is against the background of the raised nuclear threat. Not only has Putin been threatened to use nuclear weapons, he only threatened again the EU today of a first strike. But also we know that Soviet commanders or Soviet doctrine, and that doctrine seems to be followed in Ukraine at the moment, would allow local commanders to use tactical nuclear weapons, smaller nuclear weapons, to stave off defeat. And, that is something becoming increasingly likely in Ukraine. And also, as we've discussed before, Zaporizhzhia, the largest nuclear power station in Europe, is being run by the Russian military, commanded by a chap called General Vasilyev, who is the Russians' top chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear commander, a little bit like I was, but I expect his skills are more offensive than defensive. And if he blows up that power station or an accident creates some sort of meltdown, then the contamination could be felt and spread across Europe. So I think it is a timely report. I don't think people should get overly concerned with some of the dramatic numbers that are talked about, but I think it is high time that we in this country, and I expect across NATO, reviewed some of our defensive postures and made sure that we are back to where we were in the Cold War. Some people might be old enough to remember it. I'm just about where the BBC and others, showed black and white films, and we had pamphlets through the door that just told us, if the threat increased, what to do and how to protect ourselves to give us the best chance of survival.
I remember being in the city centre of Bradford in the late 1970s when the siren went off, indicating, Hamish, that we had about 4 minutes before it all came to an end. The serious point is there was that infrastructure then, whether it was the sirens that would give people the 4-minute warning, whether it was the nuclear bunkers for politicians and civil servants and others to keep the country running. So was the hope from the ashes of a nuclear exchange, and all that's been wound down.
Yeah, and I suppose not unsurprisingly, since the end of the Cold War, we only have a finite amount of money and we must guard against the most likely threats. But I think Ukraine has sort of changed all that. I mean, I would like to reassure the public that although Putin seems to be acting in an irrational and crazy way, there are checks and balances in place, which I'm sure still work in the Kremlin, to make sure that, he just couldn't fire off the red button without people intervening. But it's, and similarly in this country and elsewhere too, the Prime Minister just can't press the red button. And I think also the intelligence is such these days. I mentioned before these tactical nuclear weapons. I think we'd pick up them being moved because they're on launchers and trucks. So I think we'd be able to do something about that. And the Russians know that too. The greatest concern, I think, at the moment is coming out of Ukraine is probably the power station, because we know when Chernobyl blew up in 1984, that was just one reactor. Zaporizhzhia is 6 reactors. The contamination reached this country, and some parts of North Wales were contaminated for 5 to 10 years. So I think a timely report that we should review our resilience against this sort of thing, and hopefully by giving people the wherewithal to know what to do, should reassure, as it did, certainly my sort of parents and grandparents when the threat was very much higher. So I think it's prudent to look at that. But what we really must focus on, I think, is the war in Ukraine and make sure that Zaporizhzhia is safe, get the Russians out there, get the UN in. Guterres, head of the UN, has said this is what should happen. And in this particular case, I agree with him and make sure that no miscalculation or accident creates us to go down the path to what this report is talking about, a global nuclear war, which I still think is highly unlikely.
Yeah, but the fact there's a mere possibility is terrifying enough, isn't it? Hamish Breton-Gordon, really appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed. Coming up, the former government minister, my guest today, Norman Baker, is in our Speaker's Corner today with his thoughts on Britain becoming a nanny state. We'll also ask, in this current climate, is there any excuse to be out of work? Kelvin McKenzie has thoughts on that. Looking at the figures out today showing the number of people in the UK in employment rose. And we'll also discuss that. First, let's bring you up to date with the latest news headlines with Ray.
It's 4:33. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. New figures show wages are falling at their fastest rate since records began more than 2 decades ago. The Office for National Statistics say growth in regular pay, excluding bonuses, was 4.7% between April and June. However, when taking into account rising prices, the real value of wages fell by 3%. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has defended her party's plans to help the economy.
We're still in the leadership contest at the moment. Now, my priority is reducing taxes so people can keep more of their own money, at the same time as making sure we boost energy supply. It's wrong to just keep sticking plasters on this problem. What we actually need to do is make sure we are unleashing more energy, for example, from the North Sea. We're investing in technologies like nuclear, and we're finding more renewable energy as well. We need to solve this problem for the long term.
Former Manchester United player Ryan Giggs told police his head clashed with his ex-girlfriend during a tussle over a mobile phone in 2020, but that it wasn't deliberate. The 48-year-old is on trial for alleged controlling and coercive behaviour against former partner Kate Greville and the alleged common assault of her younger sister. He denies all of the charges. A man is in serious condition in hospital and 2 other people are injured after a shooting last night in northwest London. Armed police were called to a residential street in Brent just after 7 o'clock last night. All 3 men were shot but are stable today. The Met Police say the suspects fled before officers arrived at the scene. A court has heard how 2 men who died after becoming stuck in a burning hotel had tried to smash open a window to escape. A fatal accident inquiry into the 2017 fire at Cameron House Hotel on the banks of Loch Lomond near Glasgow is currently underway. Simon Midgley and his partner Richard Dyson, both from London, died in the fire. A fire investigator told the inquiry a picture frame had been prized from the wall with the likely intention to smash the window. A military base in Russian-occupied Crimea has been hit by a series of explosions. Moscow claimed the blasts were caused by sabotage following a series of attacks last week on Russian warplanes along the Crimean coast. Ukraine hasn't publicly admitted to the attack. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back to Colin Brazier in just a moment.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Coming up on 20 to 5, thereabouts, it's time for our visit today to Speaker's Corner, the part of the show where I let our studio guests get their views off their chest about a topic they are passionate about. Today it's the turn of former Government Minister Norman Baker. For the next 2 minutes or so, Norman, the show is yours.
Colin, thank you very much. Can somebody, anybody, please save us, save me from the barrage of pointless, patronising messages that are relentlessly churned over the public address system of our trains, our tubes, and in our stations? Is the travelling public so imbecilic, so woolly-headed that we need to be told to hold on to the handrail on an escalator, to be aware on wet days that surfaces may be slippy, and for mums to be told on London buses that they should stay with their buggies, or to be told on the tube to alight at Westminster for the Houses of Parliament? Are there people waiting to be told where to get off and who would otherwise travel on to Upminster without that piece of information? Why do our transport operators feel the need to fill every second of silence? Of course, a minority of announcements are genuinely helpful, but particularly on the tube, it feels like they're looking for things to say. And have the generators of all this noise pollution not realised all they're urging has no effect? When did you ever see a passenger inspecting the safety cars on the train when encouraged to do so? Make full use of the platform, we are told, by the voiceless instruction in tube stations. But have you noticed people moving down the platform when encouraged to do so? No, neither have I. We now even have phantom announcements for non-existent problems, like being told at my station of Lewis that skateboarding is not allowed within the station, when none ever takes place. Doubtless bringing a giraffe into the station is also not allowed. Should we add that to the mix? But the most egregious and annoying by far is the ubiquitous see it, say it, sorted. I heard this 8 times the other day on my hour-long train journey from Lewis to London. If someone in the rail industry or the government can remove this, I'll even buy them lunch. Hear it, bin it, sorted.
Norman, thanks very much. Absolutely terrific, bang on and thought-provoking. And the point, I mean, there are several points in there which had me nodding, and I imagine a great many of our viewers and listeners nodding along as well. But the point that you get a kind of fatigue that sets in and people just screen this stuff out, such that if there was a genuine announcement,
yes,
you wouldn't really hear it in the same way.
I think see it, say it, sorted should be therefore a real problem when the advice to the security services is that we've got an imminent threat.
Yeah.
That's when we should hear it, not every single day, every 10 minutes on the train.
We saw some pictures, and again, apologies if you're listening on the radio, we saw some pictures of the stairs, not necessarily a million miles from where our studio is, emblazoned with yellow and messages of, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Please take care, one step at a time, don't rush. And that, I remember tweeting about this and got lots of messages from people saying, but if you're partially sighted, well, what about the rights? Let's use the language of rights. What about the rights of people not to be assailed every moment by noises off and extraneous sights that you don't need to take in?
Look, I mean, if you're partially sighted, of course, it's helpful to have, for example, clear colours on rails, for example, on the trains, so you can see where you're going. That makes a lot of sense. But one step at a time? Who needs to be told that one step at a time? Who's going to actually listen to that and actually say, oh, it's going to jump up 4 steps at a time, I'll now change it to 1 step at a time. This is completely
But what if you want to, Norman? What if you want to
indeed.
take it at a leap or a bound?
Indeed. And you may be of the same generation as me, Colin, when you used to leap off trains. People used to leap off trains, slam door trains, which are actually more efficient in some ways, getting on and off. And I was in the Route Master bus, I have to tell you this, when I was driving down Piccadilly not very long ago, because there was a heritage route on there. And I wanted to go down Piccadilly, so I got on this bus. And I got on this bus only because I wanted to hang off the platform and get the air coming through onto my face. And I held on to the poles I've done for decades. And the bus conductor said to me, oh, you can't do that. I said, why not? He said, you've got to come inside. I said, the only reason I'm on your bus is in order to hang off the pole. It's the only reason I'm there. And if I fall off, it's my problem. Yeah. You know, I've decided to do that. I'll take responsibility for myself, thank you very much.
But it's a kind of, I mean, a final thought, it's a kind of mania, isn't it? But if it is a kind of mania, where does it spring from?
I think some of it is down to organisations being afraid of being sued in the courts. This is why we got these nonsensical signs saying, warning, in the hotel down the road, it says, warning, hot water next to the hot tap. You know, and we got warning, coffee might be hot. Well, of course it's hot, that's why you're buying it. Yeah. You know, this is about, one of my ambitions in life, Colin, I have to tell you, is going to the supermarket and they've got these little triangles, yellow triangles saying, floor wet. And my ambition is to go to the manager and say, I've tripped over your yellow sign. I'm going to have the yellow sign there.
Well, there's a trip, there's a claim. Norman, thanks very much indeed. I'm sure that will generate lots of emails, as did actually our previous discussion with Chris Hobbs, formerly of the Metropolitan Police. This is about the scenes of pandemonium in very central part of London, where all the tourists, many hundreds of thousands of tourists would be over the course of a summer. Looting and general disorder. You're not seeing pictures of it. We can't show you the actual pictures. They're available online, by the way. Because arrests have been made. Fernando says the police have to be forced to get out of their comfort zone and to start taking full responsibility for their own lack of knowledge about how to do their jobs properly. That's harsh. Elizabeth says, on the topic of lawless London, anybody want to comment on the performance of our London mayor right now? What exactly has he done on crime since he took on this role? Nothing. And Billy says, interesting discussion on police and lack of expertise. The issue is they spend their probation getting a classroom degree and some street tutoring. However, unlike the old district training centres, they don't get a taste for what they will face on the streets. I'm sorry to have made that discussion quite so London-centric, but that's where it happened. But it's not a problem that just affects the capital. I think we can all agree on that. Our debate this hour, data from the Office for National Statistics shows that unemployment is lower than at almost any point in the last 4 decades. Figures out today show the number of Brits in employment rose by 73,000 between June and July this year. Despite vacancies dropping slightly, there's still widespread demand for labour, with vacancies in the hospitality sector up 1/3 within the last 3 months. So we're asking, is there, given all the demand for people to start working, is there any excuse to be healthy and available for work, but still to be claiming out-of-work benefits? We're joined by the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, who I sense has got a strong view on this. Kelvin, hi to you. With inflation running rampant, the economy needing a helping hand, we need all hands to the pumps, don't we?
Well, we do, but there aren't all hands going to the pump, to be honest. In this country, currently, there are 5 million people, which is the population of Scotland. I'm not saying they all come from Scotland, by the way, although there'll be a good percentage there, who are getting out of work benefits, but they're not all of them are looking for work. So you get these shocking kind of hotspots in the country. All of them that I know of are in the north. So 26% of Blackpool, I think 22% of Middlesbrough, and unbelievably 18% of Manchester are out of work, or actually many of them not looking for work, claimants. This is at a time when actually down my street you can't pass virtually any shop which hasn't got a help wanted sign on it. And I suspect it will also be true, certainly in Manchester anyway, if not true in Blackpool, which is a really difficult area. The truth about the matter is people are not trying very hard to get work. And the effect of that, because actually they're being paid by the government, i.e. me and you, the government have no money, they're actually being paid to stay at home. And I want to stop that. I would stop. Well, if you are disabled, and even the long-term sick, I'm not against robbing them, but I must say that long-term COVID, to my mind, is very difficult to diagnose by a doctor. And could it be the backache of the 80s? Who can tell? I mean, if somebody says that they've got problems stemming out of COVID, it may be true, but it may not be true. Who can tell? But we have lots of jobs out there. And I am against paying any money to anybody who is physically able to get any kind of jobless payment at all in any shape.
OK, well, Kelvin, let's turn to Norman Baker, who was a government minister. I'm sure has sat in meetings where this kind of topic has come up and will have debated it as a politician before now. Norman, how do you, to Kelvin's point, how do you determine whether somebody is fit to work?
Well, there is an assessment in health terms as to whether they're able to claim benefits or not. Sometimes that is a deterrent, if you like. Other times, people have been deemed to be fit for work and actually been very unfit for work. So it can work both ways in that scenario. Having said that, I mean, I've got a sympathy with Kelvin's point that there are people out there who could work and choose not to do so. It is noticeable, however, that the level of benefits which are provided are not always terribly generous, and therefore it may not be advantageous to be able to work and claim benefits. You might be far better off having a job just financially. But also how terrible it is in life to just sit at home and watch daytime TV all the time. I mean, what an existence. I mean, anyone who's got any gumption at all will be out there doing something.
Yeah, I mean, Kelvin, we know, don't we, that there are lives out there that could, to a great degree, be turned around if the state had the will to say, actually, you know, go out and help pick some of those crops that are rotting in the fields right now. Spend a fortnight in the sun working outside. You'll help the country, you'll help get food in, and you'll actually maybe develop a little bit of self-respect.
Well, that is true. And all research shows, actually, people are $6,000 a year better off in their back pocket, in their bank or in their post office account, if they do work rather than not do work. And one of the issues we face now, and I think the government are grappling with it right now, is that you don't have to go to your Job Centre Plus and see your, quotes, work advisor, unquotes, if you say that I have been working 9 hours in any week. Now, you could argue, actually, that number, and I think Theresa Coffey is trying to do this, is trying to move the number up to 12. I would move the number up to 24 hours. The reality now is that we are bringing in people from around the world. 50% of all jobs that are now available, electrician, bricklayer, plumber, whatever, you can come in on a visa to do them. So literally a huge percentage of our country is migrant labour, a massive percentage, and it's going to continue exploding. And yet the very people who are against the migrant labour, right, are actually probably the idle so-and-sos sitting at home somewhere, not only in the north, in the south, anywhere, right, claiming that they've got a bad back or something that's wrong. We are watching an enormous change in our country, and I think we should be tougher on those people taking handouts to which they're not entitled.
And I think I would further add to that. I know we've got to wrap this up, but I think we need a cultural shift. People just shrug their shoulders and accept now that there are that dreadful phrase, jobs that Brits simply won't do. Why? What? Why? OK, Kelvin, we've got to leave it there. We'll talk about that some other time. I really appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Nice to see you, Norman.
Thanks.
Now, long before the days of the British Empire, news about crime and war, as well as details of births, marriages and deaths, it was spread in India by town criers who would process through towns and villages accompanied by, in India, a drummer. It's still a tradition upheld until very, very recently in the state of Tamil Nadu, but no more. A state decree has banned the practice. News will now come from more modern methods in Tamil Nadu. Of course, town criers no longer perform the civic functions they once did here in Britain, but they are still a small part now, of the traditions of many of our high streets. What role did they once serve? There's some. Apologies if you're listening on the radio. How do you become one? There's a thought. Alan Myatt has joined us in the studio. Been a town crier for 25 years and more. Joins us in the studio. Alan, thanks so much for coming in.
35 years.
35 years. Yeah, they can't do maths in there. And in all your regalia. Thank goodness this wasn't yesterday when it was very, very hot. You'd have at least had to take your hat off. Historically, how did we end up with town criers?
How did
we end up with town criers?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's in the Bible, the Torah and the Quran. They've had town criers since the dawn of history. Somebody has had to be out there to communicate the news of the day. And I do believe the town criers, are the oldest auxiliary organisation in the world.
And requirements in a town crier on their CV, loud voice.
Loud voice, personality, diction, stance, presence.
Interesting you say diction, because I'm going to take a bit of a leap here. Norman Baker, former government minister, was just having a little bit of a rant about some of the announcements that you hear on the tannoy on the railway platforms. See it, say it, sorted. Sorted was his particular beef.
I hear this all the time when I'm travelling, and I do think it's a bit nanny-ish. I know how to get on and off the train.
Precisely.
And I just think it's just absolute rubbish.
Alan, what sort of things would town criers announce back in the day? What was
town criers used to do, especially for the days of the Norman Conquest, the cost of produce at market, wheat, grain, hiring and firing fairs, because they used to have lots of seasonal jobs for labourers. So Mr. So-and-so would take the tap room in the old Bull Inn, and the crier would advertise around the town, anybody looking for a labouring job or whatever, go to the tap room and see Mr. So-and-so at 12 noon. And so they were responsible for encouraging commerce and industry, did lots and lots of promotional work. Also, when Britain was a Roman Catholic country, they used to have over 150 holidays a year, holy days.
Feast days.
So it was always advertised what you could wear, what you could drink, what you could eat, and what you couldn't.
There are definitely parallels, Norman, aren't there, with the modern nanny state?
Well, there are indeed.
Just hold that thought, because the battery's just fading out on Alan's microphone. Oh, the irony, we're talking about communication, and our microphone fails. So, Alan, stay there. I'm going to read some emails, and as we do that, the floor manager's going to come in and change and get you recharged. The emails we've got for you, these are on the Conservative Leadership Contest. Mickey says, can you please ask both Sunak and Truss what they intend to do about all the illegal migrants crossing the Channel every day? Myself and many others see this as an invasion that everyone in a position of power is afraid to tackle in a meaningful way. Ray says the system of choice is totally undemocratic because of the restriction of choice imposed by the parliamentary members. The public should have a say. Well, I'll get a say eventually. Alan Myatt's a town crier. He's here in the studio. His microphone, God willing, now works. The history is there as you tell it, Alan. Yeah. What about the current role? A bit of colour for the opening of a supermarket? What is it?
I've been a crier for 35 years, and when I started, this was before the internet, I used to recruit up and down the country for various employment agencies, actually physically on the street, like a regimental sergeant major, calling out, and then they would look at me and think, and then 2 hours later, I would still see the same individual standing there. And I would remind them, are you going to ponce off your friends at the weekend when they're having a good time? Or are you going to get yourself through the door and get a job? And I used to recruit for all these agencies up and down the country. When the internet kicked in, it slowly eroded it. But there again, one door closes and another door opens. And I still am used as on ceremonial occasions.
What sort of ceremonial occasions?
Well, for example, the product launches. There may be a civic presence. During the Platinum Jubilee, I led various parades. When we've had visits to the royal family, I've acted as MC, Toastmaster, town crier. And I work 3 days a week in London on the world-famous Camden Market, which is just 2 miles down the canal from here. Yeah. And my job is to drag people and move them around the market to introduce them to the new and exciting products and the attractions on the market. Now, you can't walk around with your laptop all day, so I'm still effective. I'm the mechanic that makes them walk through the door.
That's interesting. Norman, you've got 30 seconds. Go on, question.
We've got a town crier in my part of the world in Seaford, Peter White, if you happen to know him. He's got a very loud voice and always begins his contributions with hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Is that obligatory?
Yeah. No, oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. I'm awfully sorry for castigating you, sir.
He's just warming up his vocal cords because come the end of the show, Alan's going to take us off air with what you do best. But Norman almost got you to do it too soon. No, put the trumpet away.
We'll put it away for a rainy day.
Your time will come. Alan, thanks very much indeed. Could be fun. Tune in, end of the show. More to come.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hi there, thanks for your time. Coming up live at 5, what's going on in the Channel? The Royal Navy was sent in 4 months ago to stop migrants crossing illegally. Now we learn that the senior service is no longer to be involved. What's behind the decision? And will it mean even more migrant boats going undetected? The Conservative leadership hopefuls Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will Scotland tonight in Perth, trying to convince Conservative members they're the right person to lead the whole country. We'll cross live to Perthshire ahead of the hustings event there. Speak to the political editor of the Scottish Daily Mail, Michael Blackley. And we'll hear about the moment a furious man jumped in front of a combine harvester in a wheat field. He apparently claimed the farmer had ruined his sandwich. We'll discuss that with the Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones before 6 o'clock. With me for the next hour, the former government minister, Norman Baker. First, the latest news headlines with Ray.
Thanks, Colin. 1 minute past 5, here's the latest from the GB newsroom. New figures show wages have fallen at their fastest rate since records began more than 2 decades ago. The Office for National Statistics say growth in regular pay, excluding bonuses, was 4.7% between April and June. However, taking into account rising prices such as food, energy and fuel, the real value of wages has fallen by 3%. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is defending the Conservative Party's plans to help the economy.
We're still in the leadership contest at the moment. Now, my priority is reducing taxes so people can keep more of their own money, at the same time as making sure we boost energy supply. It's wrong to just keep sticking plasters on this problem. What we actually need to do is make sure we are unleashing more energy, for example, from the North Sea. We're investing in technologies like nuclear, and we're finding more renewable energy as well. We need to solve this problem for the long term.
Well, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the wage stats are further evidence of mounting pressure on millions of families.
Look, this is further pressure on so many families, so many working people. And this wage stagnation has been going on for 10 years. So I really understand just how people are struggling. It's one of the reasons that we announced our energy price freeze yesterday, to keep those bills down and to make the choice that the oil and gas companies in the North Sea should pay a windfall tax to help people who are struggling through this winter period. So it's further evidence, I think, of the pressure that so many millions of people are under.
In international news, Jill Biden has tested positive for COVID-19. The US First Lady began to experience symptoms late last night, but the White House describes them as mild. It comes just a few weeks after President Biden tested positive for COVID. He's been tested again and remains negative. Former Manchester United player Ryan Giggs is currently on trial for allegedly assaulting his girlfriend and her sister, charges he denies. Sophie Reaper, GB News' Northwest reporter, is outside Manchester Crown Court this afternoon. Sophie, what's the latest?
Well, day 7 of this Ryan Giggs trial has just concluded here at Manchester Crown Court, and the former Manchester United player has been called up to the stand for the first time today to be questioned by the defence. Mr Giggs was asked about his reputation for infidelity, admitting that he has never been faithful in a relationship, but he told the court he had never assaulted a woman. He also denied making Kate Greville a slave to his every demand, which is something she had claimed whilst on the stand last week. Mr Giggs also answered questions about the start of his relationship with Ms Greville and how it had developed over time. He told the court of various incidents in their relationship, including what he described as a difficult patch in early 2019. Now, court will resume for day 8 of the trial tomorrow at 10 a.m, where questioning of Mr Giggs will continue. And Mr Giggs has denied all 3 of the charges he has been accused of.
Sophie, thank you very, very much. Now, a court has heard how 2 men who died after becoming stuck in a burning hotel had tried to smash open a window to escape. A fatal accident inquiry into the 2017 fire at Cameron House Hotel on the banks of Loch Lomond near Glasgow is underway. The men have been named as Simon Midgley and his partner Richard Dyson, both from London. A fire investigator told the inquiry a picture frame had been prized from the wall with the likely intention to smash the window. A man is in a serious condition in hospital and 2 other people are injured, including a 17-year-old boy, after a shooting last night in northwest London. Armed police were called to a residential street in Brent just after 7 p.m. yesterday. All 3 had been shot but are stable today. The Met Police say the suspects fled before officers could arrive at the scene. The Tory leadership candidates have vowed to better scrutinise the Scottish Government if they become the next Prime Minister. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will face off at another hustings in Perth this evening. Both have stated their opposition to a referendum on Scottish independence. Ms Truss has committed to get Scotland's economy moving. Tory MP Andrew Bowie believes Sunak is the ideal candidate to ensure Scotland remains in the UK.
And it's my view that Rishi Sunak is best placed to ensure Scotland's place at the heart of our United Kingdom for years to come. That's why I'm backing him. We need to ensure that the UK government is as representative and as, stands up for Scottish people as it does for people across the rest of the United Kingdom. That's one way that we're going to ensure Scotland remains at the heart of the UK. But the other is by taking the SNP on at the ballot box and beating them.
A military base in Russian-occupied Crimea has been hit by a series of explosions. Moscow claimed the blasts were caused by sabotage following attacks last week on Russian warplanes along the Crimean coast. Ukraine hasn't publicly admitted responsibility. Meanwhile, President Zelensky is calling on world leaders to help force Russian troops to withdraw from the Zaporizhia nuclear power station in southeastern Ukraine. Former Pop Idol contestant Darius Campbell-Dinesh has been found dead at the age of 41. His family announced that the singer and actor was found in his US apartment in Minnesota. After appearing on Pop Idol, he forged a successful stage career, including West End roles in Chicago and Guys and Dolls. The cause of his death is not yet known. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Colin Brazier.
Seven minutes past 5. Thanks for your time. We start with this story. The Royal Navy is planning to end its role leading the UK's response to the migrant crisis in the English Channel. The Royal Navy took over command and control functions in April, part of a plan to deal with the growing number of small boats crossing the English Channel, but it will now end those patrols from early next year. It'll leave the Home Office having to bolster its operations with its border force vessels to fill the void. There's been complaints from some Conservative MPs that the Navy has effectively become a glorified taxi service in the Channel, with the number of migrants making the journey passing 20,000, as we reported yesterday, day before, already this year. Let's turn to Tony Smith, former Director General of UK Border Force. Tony Smith, welcome to you. Thanks for your time as ever. Do we know why the MOD have decided that the Navy are not for this task anymore?
Yeah, hi, Colin. Well, this was always only a temporary measure anyway. It was due for renewal in January of next year, but the Navy were given command over the entire operation, which of course involves a number of agencies, including the Border Force earlier, and they have clearly decided or indicated today that they do not intend to retain primacy next year unless directed by ministers to do so, which suggests to me that this will be shifting back to the Border Force, who, of course, in the meantime have been bolstering their own resources and capabilities to enable them to do so.
Is this, Tony, do you think is this a row within Whitehall between the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence? Is it a reflection perhaps of this strange limbo governmentally that we're in right now as we wait for a new Conservative Party leader and Prime Minister, that the MOD perhaps feels it can say this unchallenged right now?
It may be that, Colin. I don't know. I do think, however, there's been a very deep look at how things have gone since the Navy has been in charge, and I think people need to understand that really, you know, as we said before, this wasn't going to stop the problem, was it, Colin? This was going to be potentially a way to ensure that more vessels would be identified if they tried to, evade the Border Force, because they have very good surveillance capabilities, but that resource will still be available anyway, whoever's in charge. But it was never going to stop the boats, was it? I think this is the real problem, is what the Royal Navy are saying is that we have other things to do in defence of the nation. This isn't really our role. And of course, you know, immigration enforcement and Border Force are better equipped to deal with the problem. But of course, they can't deal with the problem either, as you know, Colin, because they can't send anybody back.
No, we're left with the impression that this was one of those headlines you can only conjure up once. Let's send in the army, let's send in the Navy, let's send in the military, but actually didn't have a lot of real-world impact.
I don't think it has made much difference to the business model, to the smugglers, or to the entire operation, really, Colin. I mean, we have had a couple of successes. There was a major operation by the National Crime Agency with European law enforcement a few weeks back, which was very good. Did take out some of the level 3 criminals. We have seen some evidence, I say some evidence, of the French disabling vessels on French beaches. Those are the sorts of things that we need to do, but they're not really to do with whether the Royal Navy or the Border Force has primacy on the Channel. There are other issues, and I think that this is, as you know, a much bigger problem. And the real problem is that the numbers continue to go up. People are just adding to the asylum backlog that we have in this country, and we haven't been able to find a way of actually breaking that business model and sending anybody back anywhere, have we, Colin? And I think that's the real problem.
Tony Smith is the former Director General of the UK Border Force. Tony Smith, appreciate your time and your expertise as ever. Thanks very much indeed. Norman Baker, former Home Office Minister, alongside me here in the studio. I was almost tempted to draw a parallel between what Tony Smith was saying there, multi-million-pound Royal Navy vessels in the English Channel, but actually, as he pointed out, the thing that's been effective recently were a couple of French gendarmes with a knitting needle going on the beach.
Precisely so. Look, I mean, the Royal Navy deployment was simply a PR exercise for the Home Secretary who wanted to sound tough. I'm sending the Navy. That's what it was about. I mean, the idea that they could ever push back boats, that was the impression she wanted to give people, that they could push back boats. They can't push back boats. It's against international law to do that. And when someone is at sea and is flailing, there is an obligation on all nations, going back decades, to make sure people don't drown. That's what the international law says. So Border Force, who actually have got the expertise over many decades for us in this country, are the people who are best placed to handle matters in the Channel. But the reality is that if people land here, they land here. They can't be forced back halfway through the Channel.
But we're entitled to be furious about it, Norman, aren't we? When you see predominantly young men destroying their identity papers, throwing their phones overboard, pretending they're children or their family members to game the system. I mean, it's a terrible way of beginning a relationship with a country which presumably you want to be a part of.
It is. I mean, look, there are a whole range of things that need to be done. First of all, the world actually needs to try and stabilise those countries which generate the people who leave, aim for our shores.
It's a great aspiration.
It's a great aspiration. It can be done to some extent.
Yeah,
it's very difficult. But there are often trouble spots in the world which we've not
what are we going to do? We've got current projections, an extra 4 billion people in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
And, if I was growing up in, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and I had family in London, I'd want to come here.
Of course.
Well, they can't all come.
No, they can't all come. And there is a requirement, really, they ought to be seeking asylum if it is an asylum issue rather than an economic migration issue. They ought to be seeking asylum in the first country which is safe rather than the last country which is safe, which doesn't happen. What we could do over here is cooperate far more with the French rather than having an argument with them all the time, which doesn't help. And secondly, we need to process people who are claiming asylum much more quickly. I mean, there's a backlog going for months. They sit in this country, not working, by the way, because they're not allowed to work. They should be allowed to work, in my view. And they're there for months and months because Home Office is incapable of dealing with it quickly.
Problem is, Norman, as you know, you can't make the French play ball if they don't want to. They're a sovereign nation,
They're
just like we
a
are.
sovereign nation, but we could be perhaps...
Bunging them more cash.
Well, more cash, but perhaps just a bit more polite to them. The government is actually very rude to the French.
They're quite good at that themselves.
Diplomacy is a way forward.
Norman, thanks very much indeed. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will try and convince Scottish Conservatives this evening that they are the right candidates to lead the party in the country. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will go head-to-head. It's in Perth this evening, the latest Tory leadership hustings event. Both hopefuls stating their opposition to a referendum on Scottish independence, indeed Ref 2, will persuade people to vote for them. Will it? Will it, we wonder? Well, earlier Liz Truss was at a whisky distillery in Elgin. She was asked if her comments about Nicola Sturgeon being an attention seeker might have alienated voters or won some over in Scotland.
Well, I'm absolutely passionate about Scotland and the United Kingdom. I grew up in Paisley. I've spent my primary school years there. And what I want is to deliver for the people of Scotland, and that's what I'm focused on.
What can you do to help the people of Scotland in terms of the cost of living crisis and the high price of energy at the moment?
Well, the first thing I will do is reduce people's taxes. We shouldn't have raised national insurance. It's cost ordinary families money. I'd also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on their fuel bills, and also boost energy supply to bring prices down.
How can you shore up support for the union? There's one poll saying today that whether yourself or Rishi Sunak win, that there'll be a boost for independence. How can you shore up support for the union here?
Well, first of all, we had a referendum in 2014. It was clear it was a one-in-a-generation referendum, and the Scottish people voted for the Union, for the United Kingdom. And I'm absolutely committed to delivering for Scotland, delivering jobs and growth and opportunity, working closely with Douglas Ross to take on the SNP who've been failing Scottish people, whether that's on education, whether that's on health, or whether it's on the transport system.
Let's turn to Michael Blackley, who's the political editor at the Scottish Daily Mail, who joins us now. Michael, welcome to you. Have you heard either of these candidates propose any specific policy that will help the union cause? I mean, for instance, somebody was telling me recently what a problem it is that Scottish students no longer go to English or Welsh universities. So you've got a whole cohort, a whole generation of people who will become the next generation of opinion formers and policymakers in Edinburgh and Glasgow, whose life has been, to a great extent, in Scotland. And there hasn't been that cross-fertilisation which there has been for decades and indeed centuries. Where are those policy ideas that help the union?
Yes, I think we haven't necessarily seen policy ideas to help the union. I think the approach of both candidates has really been trying to show to Conservative Party members that they will actually stand up to the SNP, that they'll take the fight to the SNP. So I think that's been what we've heard quite a lot about. Only this morning, Liz Truss wrote a piece for my paper, the Daily Mail, where she talked about how she felt that Nicola Sturgeon is increasingly out of touch, and she talked as well about parliamentary privilege for the Scottish Parliament, about providing things that would allow MSPs in the Scottish Parliament to hold the Scottish Government to account more, and to allow Westminster to hold the Scottish Government to account as well. So I think that's been the main focus, really, rather than policies to strengthen the union. It's policies to show that they will stand up to the SNP. That's, I think, what the dominant issue has been so far.
Two things may amount to the same thing, Michael. I mean, just I know it's a bit technical, but since you introduced it, can we just explore it? This idea, I'm not sure how many people in the rest of the UK understand this, that when Holyrood was set up, it didn't mimic, in lots of respects, the way it's configured, not to be confrontational like the cockpit of the nation at Westminster, but also this idea about parliamentary privilege, which in the minds of some means that in Edinburgh, the politicians can't go as far as they do at Westminster. Just amplify that for us.
Yes, I mean, that is the case. We actually saw it demonstrated during the Alex Salmond case, because there were some things that the MSPs in the Scottish Parliament were just failing to get answers from the Scottish Government about. But David Davis at the time took the opportunity to raise issues and raise questions in Westminster about the actions of the Scottish Government, which couldn't have actually been raised in Holyrood. So it seemed like quite a strange situation at the time, because you always get the SNP talking about how we need more power for the Scottish Parliament. But here we had an MP actually in a more powerful position to raise questions about the Scottish Government and its actions. So I think that demonstrated a bit of a flaw in terms of the Scottish Parliament, and probably raised an issue about the lack of scrutiny of the Scottish Government. There is maybe a feeling among some in the Conservative Party in particular that the SNP maybe get away with a lot more than they themselves would in Westminster. So I think that's also why you're hearing a bit more about extending powers, about scrutiny powers. And Rishi Sunak talked about that yesterday as well, because he talked about introducing a new obligation for Scottish civil servants to be obliged to answer questions in Westminster. At the moment, it's a protocol that they would if they were asked, but they're not obliged in the same way as civil servants south of the border. So I think some interesting issues that are being raised, which have been raised by a lot of the Conservative membership, and that's probably why you've got the two candidates talking about this.
And only one of the candidates, Michael, to my uncertain knowledge, can claim, as Liz Truss does, certainly when she's in Scotland, that she was born in Paisley. Does that matter to anybody? I mean, apart from that, I suppose it reminds us that hundreds of thousands of Scots who were born in Scotland will not be able to vote in any future referendum.
Yes, that's always an issue that some raise. Does it matter? I mean, it shouldn't matter, frankly, because it's a British Prime Minister who acts for the whole of the United Kingdom. So whether they were born in Scotland, England, Wales or Northern Ireland shouldn't really be an issue. But sometimes it does. I mean, as much as everybody thought that the last Scottish Labour leader before the current one should not suffer any consequences at all, any issues, because he was English, He actually did. I mean, people admitted that was sometimes, with some voters, it was a problem. So where you're born, maybe it does become an issue for some. But I don't think
it may have also had something to do, Michael.
Members.
It may also have had something to do with the fact he was a raving Corbynite as well. But that's another story. Michael Blackley, who's the political editor at the Scottish Daily Mail, joining us there. Thanks very much indeed, Michael. Norman Baker's alongside me. Just on that point about, because it sort of seems part of the identity politics thing now, that there is a constituency in Scottish politics that craves authenticity, and you have to sound Scottish to be properly Scottish.
Well, I was born in Aberdeen and I don't sound Scottish at all, actually, because I...
But you really know what I'm driving at then,
I do, absolutely. And I think what's happened since Scottish devolution, and I was in Aberdeen last week for a holiday, is that Scotland is drifting further apart from England. Not just politically.
Aren't bits of Scotland driving further apart from each other as well?
Are Scots driving further from each other?
Well, you know.
Well, maybe they are, but I mean, the whole feel of Scotland is much more, European, if I may say so, rather than English or British. It was moving away, and I picked it up quite markedly in just shops and walking down the street. So there is an issue there. I think the two Tory candidates are talking about various steps to try and bring Scotland into line. I paraphrase them. I think that wouldn't strengthen the union; it would weaken it. Actually,
Well, give us one new idea to help the union now.
To help the union.
Do you want to help the union? By the way?
I believe in the union. I believe in the union, but I think that it's the worst thing that can be done is to antagonise people in Scotland by having more control from London. That would be absolutely the wrong thing to do. So I think.
But did we not get here by just giving too many powers that have, devolution was going to sort it all out? No, it didn't.
Well, devolution has been...
It was meant to be a brake and it became an accelerator.
It's been yes, that's true. It was meant to be a brake. It actually has done well for Scotland. I think Scotland's got more self-confidence than they did have before.
But it's a self-confidence that often derives from hating the English, Norman.
No, I think that's overplayed, actually. And I think if you saw, for example, the Scottish people were wholly supportive of the English Lionesses when they were playing in the Cup final, for example, quite recently. So I think, in fact, that's overplayed. It's a subject for comedians, but it's not really as deep as you might think it is.
Comedians that are currently getting cancelled in Edinburgh, but that's another story. We've got to move on. Norman, thanks very much indeed. Emails briefly. Is there an excuse not to take one of the many jobs that the British economy currently offers if you're fit and healthy? Kate says, people are having a summer off with government help. When schools start in September, people will be working again to be in a workplace which keeps them warm and also for lower fuel bills. People have become lazy again with government aid to be so. Alex says, I have a friend who's been out of work for 5 years, doesn't apply for jobs, he gets told to go to interviews and says he's unwell on the day. He laughs about it. Why are he and others like him still being paid? Jason says, a few years ago I had to leave my job as a wind turbine technician. I went for a job in a local hotel doing maintenance and was told jobs like mine were being done far cheaper than the wage I was willing to accept. No wonder people don't want to work. The employers simply won't pay a decent wage. There's one thing that improves wages. It's a labour shortage. I wonder if that's changing in the wind turbine technician sector. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, the former Liverpool footballer turned pundit Graham Souness said he doesn't regret referring to the Premier League match between Chelsea and Tottenham on Sunday as a man's game on all levels. He's faced a backlash, with some critics suggesting he's divided the sport weeks after the Lionesses won the Euros. Aidan McGee will join me next. Back in a moment.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The former footballer of great repute, Graham Souness, turned football pundit, says he does not regret his remarks about football being a man's game. This was after the Chelsea-Tottenham draw. It was played out on Sunday. The former Liverpool player came under fire for saying the Premier League's showdown at Stamford Bridge showed, quote, it was a man's game all of a sudden. Souness was sitting next to the former England women's international Karen Carney when he made those comments. There has, it's blown up. Aidan McGee, the sports writer, is here to ponder on it. Aidan, what should we consider in terms of this story? What does it tell us about the way things are moving in football and the way football is reported?
Well, let's take the comments first of all. I believe that the vast majority of people watching and consuming the product and watching that game on Sunday were in no doubt of what Graham Souness meant. He was talking about the reclaiming of the game in terms of rule changes. Referees are allowing a little bit more to go. Probably an unfortunate turn of phrase, I'll grant.
It's a bit more
that.
physical.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, it doesn't go one way. I mean, some of the rules that have limited the physicality have been done for a reason. They've been done to make the product more saleable and make it quicker. You do that by making it quicker. Everyone likes a fast product. It's also been done to limit the risk of injury. So it's a little bit of an old-timers view, but a lot of people like me would say, well, actually, I like physicality in my football. I like it to be a little bit like that. And I know there are injuries, but, that's just part and parcel of the game. We put up with it in other sports. Why shouldn't we do that in football? There have been moves by IFAB, by FIFA, by UEFA even, to make football a non-contact sport. People don't like that. So that's exactly what he was talking about. And when he's talking about men's football, yes, it is a man's game. That's not disputable. I don't believe there's a counter-argument to that. And I don't believe he's set out. You should always look at intent. That's what a court would do. Yeah. It always looks at intent. Was Graham Souness's intent to undermine any of his studio guests, Karen Carney, for example? Was he intending to undermine the women who did well in the Lionesses, for example, this summer, and have made great strides within women's football? I really don't think he did. I think he was talking about rule changes in the game, and that's how it's manifested itself from here on.
I'm trying to read the face of Norman Baker, former minister, who's alongside you. You were being slightly inscrutable, but I think...
Inscrutable?
Yeah.
Well, that particular game was a man's game, if you like, but it's also a women's game. The one I saw, there was a women's game, and I went to see them in Lewes. Look, I mean, Lewes, actually, my hometown...
That's a different game.
Absolutely different game, but they're both valid games. So there's a man's game and a women's game.
Souness wasn't denigrating the women's game.
No, but I think he's been interpreted that way. That's the problem. That's how it's come across to some people, because he's used the word man, and that's kind of...
I mean, this all gets a bit semantic, but I mean, Aidan, was he making a link between the increased physicality and saying somehow that was male, masculine?
No, I don't think so, because anybody who watched the Euro final the other week, Colin, when Germany set out their stall from the get-go at Wembley to physically intimidate the female players, their opponents with the Lionesses, can see that physicality exists in the women's game. Now, it's two different things. They're two different manifestations of each sport, or versions of the sport, but they're fundamentally the same game, because the intent was still there by the Germans to physically intimidate England, the same as what would happen in the Premier League now. And that's a good thing. A lot of people would think that's a good part of the sport. Yes, you have the technique. Yes, you have bending the ball around the wall. Yes, you have pace. But you also want physicality. You want contact. And so it's same but different, to quote a T-shirt I once bought into work.
We have less physicality now than we used to, in fact. If we go back to when I was playing as a young lad, I mean, people like Nobby Stiles and so on, I mean, you'd hack you off, you just take your legs out.
Yeah, look, we had to recoil from that. We had to eliminate the prospect of injuries. But some people think the game has gone too far. I really don't think Graham Souness, and I don't know him, I've interviewed him a few times, but I don't know him, I really don't think Graham Souness would be daft enough when he's sitting next to a female pundit to say something that denigrates the women's game.
Aidan, we've seen before in the context of cancel culture.
Yes.
We know that people, Graham Souness is first and foremost a footballer who's then gone into journalism and punditry.
Yeah, he's a successful manager
He's not spent his life thinking very carefully about the meaning of words. He's sometimes speaking from the gut. And there's a danger with that, isn't
football parlance as well. It's football parlance. And I'll give you an example. The vast majority of people would actually agree with the sentiments that Graham Souness spoke about on Sunday. But when I was trying to get a guest for Nigel Farage's show this evening, speaking to a talent agent this afternoon, he said, look, Aidan, sorry, yeah, most of them agree with what Graham says, but they don't really want to come on. Really? They want to avoid it. And that's really telling. We have created a society within our media culture where the majority view is being suppressed. And that's why GB News is very important, because we are actually representing the majority of people in the majority of cases, in my opinion.
Well, and it's an opinion I share. Aidan McGee, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Coming up, we'll hear about the moment a furious man, he seemed pretty furious, you judge yourself, jumped in front of a combine harvester. Middle of the harvest, the wheat was being harvested. He claimed the farmer had ruined his sandwich with all the dust. We'll discuss that with the Welsh farmer Gareth Gwyn-Jones. He'll have some strong views. Stay with us.
.33, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. New figures show wages are falling at their fastest rate since records began more than 2 decades ago. The Office for National Statistics say growth in regular pay, excluding bonuses, was 4.7% between April and June. However, when taking into account rising prices, the real value of wages actually fell by 3%. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has defended the Tory party's plans to help the economy.
We're still in the leadership contest at the moment. Now, my priority is reducing taxes so people can keep more of their own money, at the same time as making sure we boost energy supply. It's wrong to just keep sticking plasters on this problem. What we actually need to do is make sure we are unleashing more energy, for example, from the North Sea. We're investing in technologies like nuclear, and we're finding more renewable energy as well. We need to solve this problem for the long term.
Former Manchester United player Ryan Giggs told police his head clashed with his ex-girlfriend during a tussle over a mobile phone in 2020, but it wasn't deliberate. The 48-year-old is on trial for alleged controlling and coercive behaviour against former partner Kate Greville and the alleged assault of her sister. He denies the charges. A man is in a serious condition in hospital and 2 other people are injured after a shooting last night in northwest London. Armed police were called to a residential street in Brent just after 7 o'clock. All 3 were shot but are stable today. The Met Police say the suspects fled before officers arrived at the scene. A court has heard how 2 men who died after becoming stuck in a burning hotel had tried to smash open a window to escape. A fatal accident inquiry into the 2017 fire at Cameron House Hotel on the banks of Loch Lomond near Glasgow is underway. Simon Midgley and his partner Richard Dyson, both from London, died in the blaze. A fire investigator told the inquiry that a picture frame had been prized from the wall with the likely intention to smash the window. A military base in Russian-occupied Crimea has been hit by a series of explosions. Moscow claimed the blasts were caused by sabotage following a series of attacks last week on Russian warplanes along the Crimean coast. Ukraine hasn't publicly admitted to the attack. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back to Colin Brazier in just a moment.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
OK, let's get a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.208 and 1.188 euros. Price of gold currently standing at £1,467 and 59 pence per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Faro.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Before 6 o'clock, one of Britain's band of remaining town criers will join us as he officially announces the end of today's show. I'll just show you the tools of his trade. He won't be trying either of those things, you'll be pleased to hear. But prepare yourself for a din just before 6 o'clock. I want to put that down very gingerly. There you go. First, it's time for our debate this hour. A serious point. An American civil rights group has warned the Charity Commission against returning the Benin bronzes to Nigeria because the African nation profited from the slave trade. The intervention comes after London's Horniman Museum decided to return the artefacts this month, and Oxford and Cambridge agreed to do the same in July. The Charity Commission must sign off on the university's decision since they are charitable institutions. Should the Benin bronzes be returned to Nigeria? We're joined by the research fellow at the Bow Group, Benjamin Loughnane, and former Labour advisor, Scarlett Maguire. Welcome to you both. Benjamin, this is a sort of new twist on this story, this idea been advanced that actually the bronzes ought not to be returned to a country which actually, when they handed over or gave or sold the Benin bronzes to Britain, did so as part of that slave-owning, slave-processing process.
Yeah, look, let's not be naive here and say that slavery was entirely a European thing. It was going on in Africa for many years before the Europeans arrived there, and a lot of the people who benefited off of slavery in those African nations are the ones who are still in Africa. So you get these African-American groups, for example, who come out and say, actually, a lot of the people who you'll be returning these artifacts to are the people who sold our ancestors into slavery. They weren't suffering from slavery themselves necessarily. And the other part of this issue is that a lot of these artifacts have only been preserved and have only got a lot of value now because we took them, we researched them, we looked into them, we gave them a lot of value, we put them in museums. I think it was the Rosetta Stone, for example, which was being used as a part of a building. It was being used as a stone in a wall in the back of a shop somewhere until someone discovered it and went, actually, that's of quite a lot of value and importance. And now that it's got that value, they want it back. And I don't think it's because of heritage, I think it's because of money.
Scarlett Maguire, what say you?
Look, when Britain took the Benin bronzes, it was a punitive killing expedition, right? They were the British government was very, very angry because there'd been a problem in Benin and some people had been killed, and they sent this expedition to kill them and to take it was looting. It wasn't well, we might have had it. It wasn't even like the Parthenon marbles. This was a looting expedition, and I think we owe them back. Now, as far as the slavery is concerned, absolutely. There is no question that it was not only white people involved in slavery, that actually there were a lot of Africans involved. However, just as we have to come to terms with our heritage and how much we benefited from the slave trade and, look at all these wonderful houses that were built on the profits, so does Nigeria. And that's what it's about. And they've got a museum where they want to put the Benin bronzes so that Nigerians can actually see their heritage. And it is their heritage, not ours.
Yeah, Benjamin, on that point, the way Scarlett tells it, this is actually a way of helping Nigerians to come to terms with, I'm going to use the word, their forefathers and mothers' complicity with the slave trade.
Yeah, I don't believe in this idea that we need to give them back because somehow they are their sacred inheritance, and that for some reason it's their heritage and we have to give it back to them, and they're going to put it in a museum and they're all going to go and value it. I don't believe that. I think that a lot of these issues where we give people back certain artifacts, they don't end up in museums. There's no guarantee they will end up in museums. A lot of the time they get sold off to private collections because it's driven largely by money, not by heritage and not by preserving old artifacts. And that's the real worry here, is that what was in a lot of cases, and I don't know about the Benin bronzes in particular, spoil of wars go to the victor and all that, but in certain other cases, a lot of these things were actually purchased legitimately by people from Europe who then took them back to Europe in order so that we could relate, in fact, with other cultures, so that we could learn about other cultures, so that we could expand our knowledge. And the idea that you give them back and they're going to go into a museum, I just don't believe it. A lot of this is driven by money, not heritage.
Scarlett,
there's a museum waiting for them. I mean, there's no question about it. There's a museum waiting for them, and the negotiation has been going on with Oxford and Cambridge and the Horniman Museum. This isn't about just giving the Benin bronzes to Nigeria. This is about actually giving back what we looted. And remember, we looted it, right? There's no question about the Benin bronzes that we behaved appallingly.
Scarlett Maguire, Benjamin Loughnane, got to leave it there. Appreciate your time both. Thanks very much indeed. Well, now, a picnicker, I'm not sure that's strictly true, but anyway, you'll see the pictures, you decide. A picnicker was enraged when a combine harvester apparently ruined his family meal by spraying his sandwich with dust. A video, it was posted on social media, shows the man, I think it's reasonable, well, definitely reasonable to say, angrily obstructing the path of a 16-ton at least combine harvester, which was in the process, given that we're in the midst of the harvesting week. Here's the video. Apologies if you're listening on radio. I'll describe what you see. There's somebody with a dashboard camera driving through the stubble. This is stuff that's already been harvested. It's lovely, clear blue sky. There's some dust being thrown up by a combine harvester on the right, and there's the camera. And as the car pulls up to the tractor and trailer that's receiving the wheat, oh, there's somebody standing directly in the wheat. Goodness me. Trying to stop the combine harvester, and actually succeeding in stopping the combine harvester, lest he be chopped into small pieces. Farmer then gets out of vehicle and explains that actually standing in front of a 20-ton combine harvester might not be the best way of making your point. Well, some comments online have suggested that townies, particularly those recently arrived in the countryside, have a warped perception of rural Britain. The Welsh farmer and social media star Gareth Wyn-Jones joins me now. Gareth, welcome to you. What did you make of this video?
I've got to say, it did make me laugh, but it just shows you the mentality of some people out in the countryside. We call people townies. I feel sorry for these people, because the reason I'm saying this is that if you look at it, how far removed people are from their food. He was eating a sandwich that was most probably going to be, coming from that wheat or barley, or the beer he was drinking would have come from that wheat or barley. These are the things that we need to educate these people. And he wasn't like a youngster. He was, our kind of age. That's the scary bit.
No, that struck me as well. That definitely struck me. Gareth? Is it getting worse? I mean, these stories are legendary, aren't they? And well, I'm going to keep talking. Sometimes people come back, but these stories are legendary, aren't they? Of people moving to the countryside and suddenly they hate the fact there's mud on the roads from the tractors. He's not coming back, is he? No, he's not. OK. Shall I ring a bell? Norman Baker's alongside me, former government minister. I need to replace these, by the way, because the town cry is coming back.
OK.
Yeah.
Well, that guy was in a farmer's field. He was interfering with the farmer's work, as it happens, because the farmer was perfectly legitimately trying to harvest his crops. So it was inappropriate. This is very different from standing in front of a tank in Tiananmen Square, isn't it? I mean, here he is interfering with someone's activities day to day. And, there is an issue about people. I represented a constituency which was both town and country in my part of the world. And there were people occasionally who would move out to the country and complain about the
church bells on a Sunday
or something
morning,
like that.
The mud on the roads.
Or indeed in the towns, people moving next to a pub complaining about the pub noise when he moved into the house next door. I mean, this does happen. In France, I think, they've passed a law that you cannot complain legitimately about cocks crowing in the morning, because that was an issue that some people picked up in France.
Brilliant. I think we've restored the line to Gareth. Let's go back. Gareth Wyn-Jones is... there you go. Things you've seen, Gareth, that sense that there are people who've moved to rural areas, they like the views, they like being able to walk the Labrador to the pub and the nice roaring fire in the winter and all the sort of cliches, but actually it's the reality they struggle with.
Especially working in the summer, getting the harvest in, will we be working all hours? Like that gentleman said, the cockerel singing in the morning, waking everybody up. But that's part of rural life. And I think it's important that if you are going to move into the countryside, you have to understand that that is going to be it. It's not that idyllic place that is Beatrix Potter. If you don't close your chickens in at night, the old fox is going to come and it's going to chop their heads off. It's not Beatrix Potter. It is real life, and we do need to make sure that people understand that it's a working, living landscape, because we're producing the food for them to put on their plates. So stopping that combine was absolutely ridiculous. And I think, people like that need to come on a farm and be educated to understand what goes on for them to have affordable, sustainable and environmentally food on their plates every single day.
You think, Gareth, maybe the rural community has to give a little bit as well? Because, maybe not so much in the part of Wales where you are, but in large parts of the UK now, areas which used to be almost a wilderness, and where country pursuits were known to a settled population there. Lots of people have moved into those areas and they've become sort of suburbanised a little bit. And given that those people have, bought their houses, they've got a stake in those neighbourhoods and communities and villages, is it beholden on the rural community to sort of listen to them a little bit and maybe give a bit of ground? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's embracing that. We've seen people move into this area, and be quite disgusted at the smell of manure. But when you talk to them and explain the importance of that manure for the soil fertility and how it works, people start to understand. It's part of that circle of farming, that circle of our Ely processes. And that's what's key here, is the educational side, bringing people on board. And we can see, growth in certain dietary ways because of some people thinking that they're saving the planet and nothing's killed for their special kind of diet. But again, it's misleading propaganda, and we, as an industry, we need to engage more with our consumer and customer and bring them on board so they're, supporting us, buying our produce and celebrating the great British public, the great British farmers and the public with them. It's working together.
Yeah, I'm into that. Gareth Wyn-Jones, nice to talk to you as ever. Thanks very much indeed, and thanks for your time. Alan Myatt's joined us, as we predicted he would, for the end of the show. He was talking to us an hour ago about the history of being a town crier. Why are we talking about this today? Because, Alan, as we were explaining, one of the last parts of the world where actually town criers are actually used to announce local news, whether that's birth, marriages or deaths or actually serious things, is in India. and the particular Indian state where it's been happening, they've canned it finally. So we thought we'd use that as an excuse of talk to get you in and get you to do your thing. You were explaining an hour ago that you've got to have certain aptitudes to do your job, not least a loud voice.
I mean, that's part and parcel, but it's not the necessary ingredient. It's having the presence, and the build, the stance, the diction, and the confidence, and to be able to communicate to people of all classes, right across, and feeling comfortable in the various environments.
Alan, what's changed? I'm guessing in your 35 years of being a town crier, it's only the last 10 years that people have now... They want selfies with you, presumably, do they? There's lots of smartphones
They want selfies. They throw their arms around me. They're very bon harmony. The great British public, and the visitors overseas, they come back and see me year in, year out. And we saw you 10 years ago with the kids, and they show me pictures. And that's nice.
Yeah,
that's nice. That's the nice side of the job, and it's gratifying that they like to come and see you again.
Yeah, Norman.
Well, I think town criers are an addition to the landscape we've got, our town landscape, which is very welcome indeed. A bit of colour, a bit of something different, and people, certainly in my part of the world, and Seaford, I mentioned earlier on, we have a town crier, Peter White. People love to come out and see him when he shouts very loud down the street to tell us something's happening.
I think I'm right in saying, Alan, you hold the Guinness record for the...
I've got two Guinness records. I've got two Guinness records. Back in 1991, I did a 100-word proclamation for every 15 minutes for 48 hours over a bank holiday weekend, 2 days and 2 nights, and I managed to achieve a decibel reading of 112.8 decibels, and also the record for the vocal endurance. They used to call me the man with the leather larynx.
Wow.
That's louder than the heavy metal.
Well, we're going to get you to take us off air, and I'm going to hold my glasses lest they shatter. Michelle Dewberry's going to tell us what's coming up on her show first. Michelle.
Oh, I'm still baffled by the man with the leather larynx. Sounds fascinating. Looking forward to hearing that in just a second, I can tell you. On my show coming up tonight, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak up in Scotland now. Of course, talking tough. I want to look, though, at Scotland. What do we think to it so far? Will either of the new leaders make a real difference? And what about the SNP? Have they been a success for Scotland or a failure? I think that will divide opinion. Also, look, real-time wages have fallen now to some of the lowest levels that we've seen. Childcare, you've got closures pretty much everywhere, and you've got incentives to make life easier for people on benefits. So I'm pondering tonight, are we in danger of removing the incentive to work? I mean, it comes out my mouth there, and I almost want to answer the question, but I can't because it's not 6 o'clock yet. It's not my time to get into it. And also the Navy, we're looking at potentially them stopping patrolling the Channel come January. Is that the right decision or not?
Michelle, thanks very much indeed. Michelle Dewberry coming up at 6 o'clock. My thanks to Norman Baker, former government minister, who's been my studio guest today. And we're going to be, for better or worse, we're going to take you off air with Alan Myatt, who is one of the UK's best-known town criers and, coincidentally, a record holder for the decibels that he reaches with his pronouncements, announcements and horn blowing. Cotton wool in the ears. Here's Alan.
Oh, yeah! Oh, yeah! Greetings and felicitations to all the viewers out there. This is Colin Brazier on GBNews. Up next, Michelle Dewberry with Dewberry and Co. God preserve Her Britannic Majesty Elizabeth II. God save the Queen!
Hello, it's Aidan McGibbon here with the latest weather update from the Met Office. Certainly some lively weather out there this afternoon, and there will be further showers and hit and miss thunderstorms during the rest of the day. Not everyone will be affected, though. It is turning drier towards the northwest. This area of high pressure is building in from the northwest, and that's settling things down across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. But these fronts and an area of low pressure to the south is maintaining some very intense downpours and thunderstorms, and that will continue to be the case across southern and central England, parts of Wales overnight. The speckled nature of the showers indicates that not everyone will catch one, but if you do, well, prepare for some surface water issues, some tricky travelling conditions. For example, a warm night in the south, 15 to 16 Celsius. Much fresher for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, 8 to 10 Celsius here. But actually, skies clearing overnight and a beautiful start to the day. Plenty of sunshine for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. Increasingly North Wales, parts of the North Midlands as well. But the action is focused towards the south on Wednesday as far as showers and thunderstorms are concerned, and there could be some very lively downpours there towards the southeast, in particular some slow-moving thunderstorms. All the while it's turning cooler, temperatures at around 24, 25 Celsius in the southeast, high teens, low 20s elsewhere. And further showers will continue across central and southern parts of England through the evening and overnight. Eventually many of these will fade away. A gap then, clear spells for many, but further cloud and rain pushes into western Scotland and Northern Ireland overnight. 12 or 13 Celsius in the north, 16, 17 further south, so still a relatively warm night to come. But actually for many it's a bright start to the day, certainly some sunshine to be had across Northern England, the Midlands, Wales, southwest first thing. The cloud and rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland pushes south. And it turns more showery so that it's sunshine and showers for many on Friday, drier again on Saturday.
Tonight on GB News, at 6 it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate.